All right, so today we're diving into what is basically a scientific detective story. Think about it. The crime scene is this huge wheat field. The victim? A crop that is super important to, our food supply. And the bad guy? Well, that's the big mystery we're going to try and solve.
So, what exactly is making Alabama's wheat so sick? I mean, this is where our whole story kicks off. You've got farmers, you've got researchers, and they're all looking at these fields and they know something is seriously wrong. The plants are sick, but nobody knows why. And believe me, this isn't just some small local issue. We're talking about a problem with some major billion-dollar consequences.
And yeah, when I say billions, I'm not kidding. Just to put it in perspective, in 2023, the U.S. wheat crop was worth a staggering $12.3 billion. So you can imagine when some mystery illness starts popping up, finding out what's going on, well, it's not just for science's sake, it's a full-blown economic emergency.
So, what did these sick plants actually look like? Well, the clues were kind of weird. You had leaves turning yellow, some strange purple streaks, and the plants just weren't growing right. They were stunted. The biggest problem, though, is that these symptoms are super generic. It's kind of like when you go to the doctor with a fever. Yeah, you're sick, but a fever could mean 100 different things. That's what they were up against. Okay, so this is where the real investigation begins. With these vague symptoms, the researchers knew they were in for a tough time. They had a crime, but no clear prime suspect. It was obvious they'd have to dig way deeper than just what they could see in the fields. At first glance, everything seemed to point to a really simple answer: a nutrient deficiency. Maybe the soil was just missing something. All the signs were there: the yellowing, the stunted growth. But this turned out to be a total red herring. It was a misdirection that made trying to figure this out just by looking at the plants, well, pretty much impossible. But the scientists did have one major suspect on their list. An old enemy, actually. It's called barley yellow dwarf virus, or BYDV for short. This thing is, well, it's notorious. It's a group of viruses that hits grasses like wheat and barley all over the world. And guess what? It causes exactly these kinds of vague, confusing symptoms. Sounds like an open and shut case, right? Well, there was a catch. And here's the twist. BYDV hadn't been officially found in Alabama's wheat for more than 20 years. 20 years! It was basically a cold case. So the big question was, did this old virus somehow make a comeback after all this time? Or were they dealing with something completely new? To get to the bottom of it, they had to leave the fields behind and head straight for the lab. They needed some serious, modern-day forensic tools to hunt for evidence you just can't see. Yep, it was time to go genetic. See, the key thing here is that looking at the plants wasn't enough. They had to go deeper, right into the plant's genetic code. They used a really cool technique called RNA sequencing. You can think of it like running a full genetic interrogation on the plant. They were looking for the fingerprints of any intruder, any virus hiding inside. So how does that even work? Well, it's a 4-step process. First, they went out and grabbed leaf samples from 4 different varieties of the sick wheat. Then, back in the lab, they pulled out all the RNA. That's all the active genetic messages inside the cells. Step 3, they fed this into a high-tech machine that reads millions and millions of these tiny genetic pieces. And finally, they used some powerful software to sort through this absolute mountain of data, trying to find a match against a huge library of known viruses, bacteria, and fungi. All right, so the analysis is done, the data is all in. After all that work in the field and in the lab, this was it, the moment of truth. Did they finally find what they were looking for? And the answer was absolutely yes. The genetic detective work paid off big time. The data didn't just suggest a suspect. It was more like getting a direct confession from the culprit itself. And this right here, this is the smoking gun. This chart tells the whole story. Now, a cultivar is just a fancy word for a specific plant variety bred for certain things. And if you look, you can see that a few of the wheat types had, a tiny trace of the virus. But then look at that one, cultivar 26R33. It had over 53,000 genetic hits for the barley yellow dwarf virus. It wasn't just infected, it was completely overwhelmed. So, there you have it. The verdict is in. BYDV was definitely there, which means it really had returned after being off the radar for 20 years. Not only that, but they found several different species of it, and they learned that one particular wheat variety was extremely vulnerable to it. Case closed. But solving this one mystery isn't really the end of the story. The really important part of all this is what this new evidence means for the future, what it lets scientists everywhere do next. And the researchers who did this work put it best. This wasn't just another study. What they created is the very first publicly available genetic data set of this kind for this region. It's like they've just written a brand new chapter in the Encyclopedia of Plant Diseases that anyone in the world can now read and learn from. And because they made all this data public, they've basically given a powerful new toolkit to the entire scientific community. Now, other researchers can use it to track how the virus changes over time. They can develop better, faster tests for farmers to use. They can even figure out how this virus might team up with other diseases. It's a real game changer that's going to help us protect our crops for a long, long time. So this all leads to one last really big question. Now that we're getting so good at reading the genetic playbook of these diseases, can we use that knowledge to rewrite the playbook for our crops? Could this kind of data be the key that unlocks a new generation of plants that are stronger, tougher, and maybe, just maybe, completely virus-proof? That, my friends, is the next big mystery for science to tackle.